Hi, and welcome to our Animation Resources live stream. This one is another RefPack review. I'm Davey Jarrell. I'm a storyboard artist in TV animation, and I serve as the director of programming at Animation Resources. And I've got a guest with me today. He's the director of publications, and he runs the tech for our live streams. It's David Eistman.
Hello.
Hey, David.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for being here as always. I'm doing great.
Good to be here.
I've got another guest with me today. He's another Animation Resources board member, Trent Fremont.
Hi, Davey. Hi, David.
Hello.
Hey. So, Trent, tell us a little bit about what you do for Animation Resources.
So I just joined Animation Resources recently, and right now I'm the director of outreach. So in addition to any other ancillary duties like scanning or just artwork curation, like with this reference pack, I also do, I'm working on some educational outreach, whether it be to universities or students, and then any research about grant opportunities in order to raise more funding for animation resources right now.
And we wanted him on this because he's got a great voice for podcasting.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to go over our current members only reference pack, but first I'm going to quickly tell you a little bit about what Animation Resources is. So Animation Resources is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to serving the worldwide animation community. Our goal is to educate and inspire animators, cartoonists, illustrators, and students at any level they're at. Paying members get access to a new collection from our massive digital archive every single month. These carefully curated collections consist of ebooks packed with high-resolution scans, rare animated films set up for still frame study, documentaries, a podcast series, and more. All of this is designed to help you become a better artist. If you're a creative person, I highly recommend becoming a member of Animation Resources. You can sign up right now at animationresources.org/membership. One more time, that's animationresources.org/membership. So in this new reference pack we're going to look at, which is number 65, we have an ebook filled with Ding Darling's political cartoons from the early 1900s, 5 short animated films by Len Lye from the 1930s to 50s, an animated film from Russia from 1954, an episode of the Russian animated series Well Just You Wait from 1976, 2 episodes from the Japanese animated series from 1966 called Yusei Kamen, and an analysis of legendary animator Yuri Norstein. So we're going to be looking at images and clips from the ref pack, and I'm going to share my screen, and so will Trent and David, so we can show you the contents of the reference pack and give you context for everything that's there. So I'm going to share my screen and bring you to the website to show you how to download. So you go to animationresources.org/members only or membership, and it'll bring you to this page, and you can log in. Members click here, and then you are at the members only download page for VIP members. So the first thing here is an ebook, Ding Darling's political cartoons from 1919 to 1920. So you can read about it here and download it. Yeah, right click. And then hit the download. Save. Then it's saved right there in the downloads. I already downloaded everything, so I'm going to open that up. We shared an ebook of Ding Darling's cartoons last year, so now we've got more. So his lines are really loose, but they still perfectly define the characters and the perspective and the layout. It's like I really love the perspective in this one.
Yeah, he handled his hatching really well for that table. in that jigsaw puzzle. It made it look really dimensional.
Yeah, it's so complicated, but it's also really easy to look at.
Right. And I think that really stands out with a lot of Ding's cartoons is that he has a ton of line work, but he's able to handle the negative space so well that you know exactly where to look and follow which line he wants you to with where you want to lead the eye. And he does
Yeah, I
that
think
really well.
this one here is my favorite, and it's a perfect example of what you're talking about. Just
Right.
the complicated areas and the negative space, and this kind of leads your eye through the whole thing.
Right.
And because it's not so tightly rendered, it's great to study this for doing roughs.
Right. It's super loose. Like if you go back one, if you take a look at that, like his gesture with that cart and the horse as he's, zooming
Yeah.
New York there. And it's just every line flows into the next line. He's got some just fantastic gesture with this pen and ink work that, you often see with guys at this time period because they were mainly working with, pen and ink. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's got this really nice flow to it. You can see a lot of this stuff. You guys know James Herron, the comic book artist?
I do not.
He's a fantastic comic book artist, super stylized, and he employs the same level of render in his illustrations where the hatching and the rendering with these speed lines does so much for the actual gesture of the piece. And it's great. It looks stylized, and you can really see the same kind of, play here.
Yeah, and everything feels animated.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
The crowd shots and these like the amount of like detail he's able to design in these compositions just kind of blows my mind. I want to also look. Oh yeah, this one.
Wow.
I remember Steve told me he would crank these out in like a day too.
Oh, yeah, I'm
I
sure.
don't even know how that's physically possible. But these also have an impressionistic quality where if you look at them up close, they're kind of a mess, but then when you zoom out, it's perfectly clear.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's almost utilizing like silhouette and just bunching of forms for just a quick read, and it reads
Mm-hmm.
immediately. Yeah, and then he's able
I,
to direct your eye with that contrast and those heavy blacks.
yeah, these got the energy in this music one.
Yeah, I love that because it's so busy, but it's so cartoony and still readable.
Mm-hmm. There's just a couple more.
For anybody who's going to go through this, there's a pretty funny one in here where this guy is fainting because of income taxes. And given the time period, it's pretty funny because the income tax amendment in the Constitution had just been established in like 1913. So this is like a couple years later, and he's already making political cartoons about how you're losing money on taxes, which is probably one of the
Well, I
most
guess
American
that's.
things I've ever heard.
I didn't realize that was only from 1913. I assumed it's been around longer than that.
No, yeah, it was mainly in
Wow.
1913. Yeah, and the American
So that
government
was
they got money from tariffs before that, like way in the 1800s when that was actually more pertinent.
incredible. So next we've got 5 films by Len Lye. This we actually shared these in reference pack 35, and we're rerunning them.
If you watch the beginning to Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the intro animated sequence is very much inspired by these films.
Interesting.
They're painted directly on blank rolls of film with colored dyes, and then created layers of movement in optical printer. So that's technically how this is made.
Also, you
It's
can't
all
hear this because we
abstract.
don't want to get copyrighted, but these are set to music and are musically timed.
Yes, time to a beat. It's just visual representation of music. There's no narrative. There's no characters, no figurative representation, just
But you find when
visual
when you're
music.
watching it that the visuals very much match the tone and energy of the whatever song that he's playing. They're also all commercial music.
Now,
Yeah, I
was
recognized
this
all the music in these.
1930s?
It's 1935, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was commercial music for that time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Let's jump ahead here. So that the first one was called A Color Box. This one is called The Birth of a Robot. This one's pretty different, actually. But I love all these techniques. Because this one has some figurative representation.
That sequence that we just saw, yeah, I agree. It's super, figurative and impressionistic, and it almost reminded me of like the classic UPA openings and some of the stylized Disney and Warner stuff in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with that.
I mean, he probably influenced them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this was what, 20 years before that?
Yeah, exactly. This third one is called Trade Tattoo. This one's from 1937. It's mesmerizing. But yeah, all of this goes to the music perfectly.
It's cool that he's cutting in with live action footage that he's
yeah. And then when he animates words,
he just goes right over the film. With the advent of the digital age, it's almost kind of sad to see these kind of techniques fall by the wayside that these great independents were doing in this time period.
yeah, I don't know who does stuff like this anymore.
Yeah.
This one is from 1938. It's called Color Flight. There was another guy, I think, a little before him that did similar visual music. Forget his name.
Really wish we could listen to the music, but it can no longer play sound.
Yeah. That's why you got to download this.
Absolutely.
Now, is that a problem with StreamYard?
It's a problem with when we upload it.
Like to Facebook and YouTube and.
Interesting. Well, at this point, these stuff from the 30s, in a couple of years, it's going to be, open source, right? Or not open source, but public domain.
You would hope, but like copyright strike systems are just really specific and like mostly looking for sound. So you just don't want to we just have had too many issues with it.
Right.
This is Color Cry from 1952 now. So.
Ooh, very kaleidoscopic.
There's a lot of different techniques. Well, got to keep going. So next, we're going to look at another episode of Well, Just You Wait. This is episode 9, Russian cartoon from 1976. So we've shared a bunch of episodes of this show in previous reference packs. This episode is called Wolf's House TV Station. So Again, it's better with sound, but there is almost no dialogue in these. It's all just funny action, funny drawings. This was actually the most popular cartoon in Russia of all time when it came out.
Almost choppy timing, or I can't tell if it's just the video compression.
I wouldn't say it's choppy. I think it's just a little bit slow. But, you know, it's timed very nicely to the sound. Gonna jump ahead.
I'm sure that's what I'm seeing, but just without the sound, some of the timing choices seem kind of odd.
Yeah.
But if you watch it with sound, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. But
the rapier.
It's very well staged and it's well acted.
I love animated sword fights. Let's see what they do.
This would be a great film for a lot of students to watch because, you know, that's a classic gag right there.
Yeah.
This would be a great film for a lot of students to watch because a lot of times their first film projects are just no dialogue, right? And they all have to be pantomime classic
Ooh,
stuff.
that was a beautiful distortion of the blade. Is it like that wave principle became really wiggly for about a couple frames?
Right, yeah.
Oh, you never did a program on wave principles, did you? Or did you?
I did. That was one of my earlier ones.
Okay. All right. I like looking at that rope.
That was great.
Oh, well, gotta keep going. So here's a quick message for the animation students out there, and then we'll be right back. Animation Resources is supported by our paying members. As a member of Animation Resources, you get unlimited access to a new reference pack every month. It's only $70 if you're a student and $95 for the general membership. There are so many reasons to join Animation Resources, especially if you're a student. Here's some of the biggest reasons. Number one is the big lie. Basically, the big lie is that once you graduate from school, you'll get a job in animation. I'll break down why that's a big lie. The biggest misconception most animation students have is that school is preparing them for a job. This just isn't true. You can go to the best animation school in the world, graduate with honors, and still not be qualified for a job. It just isn't possible in a school setting to teach students everything that it takes to be a functioning professional in only 4 years. So what can you do in school to be as prepared as you can for a job in animation by the time you graduate? You need to learn to learn. So learn to set your own goals, determine a curriculum for yourself, work to improve your skills, push the envelope of your creativity by exposing yourself to different ways of thinking about your art. Basically, learn to grow. Look at what the college is offering you, talk to professionals, and ask them what you should be learning. Supplement your college work with self-study. It's very hard and very time-consuming to gather together the skills and frame of reference you need to be a professional, but it's a lot easier to devote time to doing that while you're still in school. If you wait until you graduate, self-study is going to have to compete with paying your bills and fulfilling your responsibilities as an adult. Your college years are a window of opportunity to learn to learn. But learning doesn't end when you graduate from college. It's a lifelong responsibility for artists. And this is exactly where Animation Resources comes in handy. Everyone needs to create their own curriculum to open their mind to creativity and build their skill set. There are a million online courses and books to study from, but even those aren't enough. The world of creativity is wider than you can possibly imagine. Animation Resources has gone to successful animation professionals like Ralph Bakshi, Will Finn, and Sherm Cohen and asked them what resources have been useful to them in their work. And every month, Animation Resources publishes a downloadable reference pack filled with material from these advisors and what they recommend. These reference packs will help you with your self-study program and open your mind to the possibilities you didn't even know existed. So that's the big lie. The truth is that your degree is only half of the education you need. Number two, is 3 steps to greater creativity. The 3 steps are 1, to observe life, 2, analyze, and 3, expose yourself to creative influences. I'll start with the first one. The primary source of inspiration for all artists is the observation of life. When you're riding the bus or at Starbucks or standing in line at the DMV, pay attention to the people around you. Look for unique personalities and try to capture them in your sketchbooks. Exaggerate and caricature them and see how you might put those personalities across in an animated character. You'll find that the characters you see on the street are a lot more interesting than most of the characters you see in animated films. Next is analysis. Analysis is at the core of what it means to think like an artist. When the average person sits down to watch an animated film, the film directs their imagination and entertains them. But a filmmaker thinks differently. Once your mind is trained to understand the process of filmmaking, you'll never sit in the theater as just another member of the audience ever again. And third is to expose yourself to a broad spectrum of artistic creativity. Really, animation should just be a small portion of what you study and expose yourself to. In order to be a creative artist in animation, you need to understand and appreciate all of the arts. This means studying the history of all forms of filmmaking, also music, painting, sculpture, dance, all of it. Number 3, self-study. Animation is very competitive, and the best way to stay employable is to constantly be learning and growing as an artist. It isn't enough to just lean on what you already know. Styles change, animation changes, the world changes. This is just as true for students as it is for established artists. And number 4, the library of your mind. A lot of young animators seem to think that all the reference they need is easy to find online, but that just isn't true. You have to know exactly what it is that you don't know in order to grow. And our advisory board at Animation Resources curate this material so you can have one of the world's best libraries on the subject right on your hard drive. And we're back. Now Trent is going to talk about the rest of the international section. So you can go ahead and share your screen.
I'll go ahead and take over. I'm going to bring up the Golden Antelope first. It's a Russian film from 1954 by a studio called Soyuzmultfilm, which was kind of started to rival Disney at the time in the Soviet Union in the 30s, and then this is one of their films from the 50s. So let's see. So here we are. Starts out with some really nice animal animation.
Yeah, all those quadrupeds. That's hard.
That's incredibly difficult.
I know that the Golden
going
Antelope
backwards.
Yeah, I love that sequence. It's so fun, so frenetic. The antelope itself was animated by a solo artist who was working with a well-known animal artist at the time. Natalia, I forget her last name. Stroganoff, maybe?
Oh, those people rotoscoped?
I was going to ask that.
Everybody's rotoscoped in there.
It contrasts interestingly with the traditionally animated deer.
Nice play with the Z-axis there.
It's a nice I like this is all one shot. That was such a huge pan.
I think for fast things like this, like he's not rotoscoped there. Maybe when he gets on the ground, but in like here he's probably
this looks rotoed.
Yeah, but in times where it's fast action for humans, I don't think they're rotoscoped.
Yeah.
And then
well, slower is harder to do. It's more drawings, more precise.
Right.
Makes sense.
You're kind of locked into the spacing and timing of whatever your reference material is for a rotoscope.
Right. And then you can see it later on when you look at some of their shots. Like if I go back here to her outrunning some of the people that come out of the bush. this is all rotoscope, and they're kind of locked into this staging, the background artist, to make this painting. So they're using a live action film reference, and then they kind of have to make a stage based off of that. And you can kind of see how it may inhibit some of their staging later on. But overall, I think that the background artists handled it extremely well. I know that there's some later on, like some of this temple, like it just looks phenomenal with the rendering of the backgrounds here.
So this whole film is 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, just about. It's pretty short.
Ooh, nice reflections.
Like this whole floor right here is just, I wish I could seek better here, but just wonderfully painted.
Yeah, I loved looking at that floor.
One thing that's interesting is the way these rotoscoped characters' feet are connecting with the floor. They're not skating. They're actually like making contact and then like settling into the contact, which is like very difficult to do.
Right.
That's like the trap you fall in when you're rotoscoping. Is usually there's sliding.
Yeah. Great painted background right there.
Yeah, I love that floor. It looks slippery.
It really does.
There's another,
I like the chair that he's sitting on too.
Yeah, it's great. And then they handle, this, sun setting sequence with the backgrounds and this whole journey. And I just love the color direction keys that they're going through here. Like this compared to, what they were handling earlier, it's still stylized, but it's just, it complements it so well. It feels like the jungle. Even now, these cool colors with this sequence, you don't really see this kind of, sharp departure from the rest of the film and other films of this time period.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So next up, You Say Common. It was a 1960s animated film, TV series. Let me put it up here. And it's very similar to 1960s series of the time. Not just Japanese, but it feels like the classic TV series that you would see from the 60s here as well.
Yep.
I'll go
silly, fun, sci-fi action.
Super silly, super fun. A lot of, hold poses, but a lot of fast movement. Like this run sequence here in the title, super fun.
Yeah.
Love these smears. I think it handled really well. So I'll skip forward to one of the more prevalent sequences here. It opens up on this runner following these cars, and
wow,
the way they handle the warped perspective here is so fun with these smears and these foreground elements here.
Whoa, what a turn!
They
almost
made this very difficult for themselves.
Yeah, but it's cool. It's providing this tone of like foreboding and everything.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. And then later on, there is a sequence. So the whole background of the series is that Earth finds a planet that is a duplicate of themselves on the other side of the sun called Pinarong. So it's like a twin planet on the other side of the sun. And we make relations with them. But, after a while, the Pinaronians have a nuclear disaster, which allows a dictator to come to power, and that dictator then invades Earth and puts people in internment camps and everything. So this is the whole beginning of setting up the sequence here with this dictator here, and it leads into this cool sequence coming up where they first attack the Earthlings, and I just think that the pacing here is handled really well as we go through. So they also handle the Z-axis really nicely, and you can kind of see that still in today in anime from this time period onward is that they just really play with the z-axis.
Yeah, this is a lot of z-axis for a 2D TV
Right.
budget.
I
Yeah,
know the budget. You never see this in American TV budgets of, and if you do, it's rare, of just them, with extensive camera moves and play with depth.
yeah.
And then even though we're not listening to the sound here, I think that the sound matches up pretty well with what they're doing here. Feels
One thing
almost
about
like
these-
the beginning of Star Wars.
They always know when best to leave it limited and when to really put in those extra frames.
Right, right. And then we'll move on to 27, which has some more high intensity sequences, because this is episode 1. So I think they were still kind of finding their footing. The key animators, I think his name was Takaharu Kusunoki. He was still kind of trying to figure out what he wanted to do with the series. But in episode 27, you can really see where he kind of stepped up his game in some of the sequences here. So this whole sequence here is kind of like a space dogfight between the Pinaronians and Earth, and then Yusei Kamen himself, who's kind of like this Zorro in space, comes in to break up the battle.
I wish I had hair like that.
Great gray hair. Love anime hair.
Really, you don't realize that his skull goes all the way up like a cone head.
Oh, this is a counter rotation. They're rotating the background in one direction and rotating the mid-ground plane of the planes in the other direction. Not planes, spaceships.
Yeah, it handles super nicely. The stuff that you don't see as handled anymore in
Ooh, look at that effects animation. Almost Kanata-esque in, well, Kanata comes later, in the way that like fire just looks like liquid.
Yeah, a lot of effects animation has that kind of fluid quality to it when you really break down the frames, as you've shown, David. It's got a great speed to it. So how they're handling the timing and spacing is really well done for limited TV animation from the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah, they really make full use of their budget. Yeah, it's fast.
It's
feel
super fast. It's pretty dynamic. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at the character models, obviously you know where they're spending the budget, and that's here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exciting. For people kind of shrug off, 1960s international kind of hokey animation, but it's pretty dynamic and exciting for a battle sequence.
All the anime from this era that we've shared in the reference packs has been really fun.
Yeah. And that's it for this space dogfight. And that's pretty much the highlight of 27. And there's a couple other highlights like that with the final battle sequence and some espionage play there. But it's all kind of like that with that fast, dynamic movement. And and really, really great stuff to study, because I think, with modern anime and modern sakuga, you can study it, but it's pretty hard to break it down and study it on your own if you're like, a beginner or even an intermediate. So here they're utilizing a lot of simple forms pretty effectively. Pretty nice if you want to break it down and just do a study frame by frame. So that's the bulk of the international section there.
So, David, you want to share your screen?
Yeah. Okay, so previously in all the other reference packs that I've written articles for, I did an article on an informal principle or a type of technique like the wave principle, resistance, motion frames, perspective turns, all that good stuff. But coming back to the reference packs, I want to kind of change my groove a little bit. So from something I've always wanted to do is kind of pick an animator and then choose 4 clips from some of their work and then kind of dissect some of their trademark styles and techniques and like themes that you see across their work. So the first one I went with is Yuri Norstein. Norstein's a really interesting character in the history of animation because he's kind of universally well known. Well, it depends on how you define well known. In the niche discourse of animation study and international animation study, he's incredibly well known.
Yeah.
His film Tale of Tales won the award in Los Angeles International Film Festival for being the best film ever made, animated film ever made. People make videos about him on YouTube, so he's like kind of notorious. Let's watch some of his clips, and then I'll discuss some of his techniques and stuff, and break down some of his frames, some of these frame by frame. So this first one is from Hedgehog in the Fog, probably one of his most well-known films. Really great introduction to his style of multimedia animation. He's really great at combining these 3D, like more stop motion figures with his paper cutout animation. He never did cellulose like they do in the West. Paper cutout was very popular in Soyuzmultfilm, which Norstein was one of the lead animators at. This is one of my favorite techniques that Norstein does. He has very specific ways that he directs the camera. So like he does a lot of these tilting and moving shots, but he always establishes the shot first with some kind of medium or medium wide. Like if we come here, like we bring out and we come into the hedgehog, we establish the hedgehog in relationship to the tree. Then you cut in closer to the hedgehog as you, well, this case it's a zoom. Then he cuts to this upward shot where he allows for this counter rotation. And then he does a really great thing, which you'll see in his work, which he'll just suddenly stop following the main action to trace a random element of the background, which I always really like. In this case, the leaf. The next part is from Tale of Tales. This is just the first part of the entire film, so I'm not going to go through it entirely, but this is a series of vignettes, mostly talking about war and all the great losses that were suffered by the Soviet Union during World War II. So you see a lot of recurring themes, a lot of recurring characters, especially about loss and like just like the decimation of the Russian population. One of the interesting things that you really see in this film, Tale of Tales, is Norstein's ability to create like really subtle color contrast. He usually uses very simple palettes. In this case, it's like a sepia tone palette with like an orange, brown, white, and then black. But even though this film is like almost washed out in the way that its colors play, you can still see the contrast between individual silhouettes of the tree and the man. This is also a really great example of the way he liked to do his paper cutout puppets, especially early on in his work, where he was really great at being efficient in where he would do replacements and where he would do hinge joints. Because one of the things with paper puppets is that you could hinge your certain joints so that you could move them around from frame to frame. But there were also replacement sections, usually on the face and clothing, where you would replace certain sections of the puppet with other parts of the puppet that would attach. So here you see much more simple puppets, like this woman, her, like, you can guess the hinge joints, like there's like one here, one here, one here at the shoulder, elbow, hand. Her head is probably a replacement. Norstein was also a really great at dividing his planes. So he was a big fan of the multi-plane camera. He created his own using really specially designed glass planes that were spread apart at around 10 inches each. And because of that, it allows him to really create this really nice depth of field where he's really separating the background, the midground, the foreground. This is one of his earliest work. This is from 1969. It's a film about a couple riding into town on Christmas, all set to the music of Tchaikovsky. This is entirely stop motion, 3D, but it still has a lot of Norstein's signature elements. You've got a lot of like these really cool rotating camera moves, following random elements of the background, really distinct color contrast while using almost simplified color palettes until you get closer on and they come to the village, and that's where their color palettes, the greens and the reds and the blues, really blend in to this initial scene where you have the white starkly contrasted against this like really cool reds and greens and blues of the townsfolk. I don't know if you can notice this, but these are actually probably paper in the foreground and midground, and then you can even still see this nice depth of field between these like three houses in the center and the front, and the very front versus this plane of the hill sliding down versus this next plane of the second hill sliding in the other direction. So you just like plane after plane after plane, creating this really cool depth of field. And then finally, the last clip I showed is from the overcoat. So I'll play this in full, and then we'll talk about it.
And this is all paper cutout.
This is all paper cutout. This film is crazy because he's been working on this film with his wife for about 40 years, and they have about 30 minutes of it.
They're still working on it to this day.
They're still working on it to this day. It's kind of like if you've ever seen Richard Williams' Prologue.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be a longer film. He just unfortunately passed away before it could get anywhere near completion. It's almost the same in the terms of just brutal inefficiency and just like complexness. Like the way Richard Williams did that with his manual perspective turns and really, really tight spacing. He's doing this here with 5 million replaceable parts. So instead of our earlier hinge puppets, there are no hinges here, basically. This is all individual replaceable parts. So if you look at the eye, he's no longer, if you look at the face, he's no longer just separating this into one or two replacement frames. The right eye is a separate plane. The left eye is a separate plane. The bridge of the nose is a separate plane. The bottom of the nose is a separate plane. The wrinkles of the forehead are 4 separate planes compared to the eyebrows, which is a separate plane, compared to the top of the head, which is a separate plane. So if you watch this, it's so interesting because he's replacing dozens of individual planes for every single character in every single shot. So
you should get into 3D printing like Leica.
Yeah,
just like to make it easier.
It should, but it becomes especially difficult with something like this, like with his body enclosed in this like blanket, because the blanket is also separate replaceable planes. Like one here, one here, one here. And then when you get into like larger scenes with people and backgrounds and everything's a dozen replaceable frames, and you can understand why it's taken them more than 40 years.
Wow. Yeah. Just that turn of that body underneath that cloak was it just was gross and how
it's gross.
Oh my gosh. Like, wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
It's impressive how unsettling it is.
It's such a unique emergent property of doing this type of animation this way.
Yeah.
Wow.
This comes from the 5 minutes of released footage. There is no sound accompanying to it, but Norstein is a musical timer, so presumably this would all be timed to some kind of music. And I will stop there.
Cool. So thank you. That's our current reference pack. Sign up now and you can download all of reference pack number 65. You have until the first week of November. Thank you both, David and Trent. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Also, thank you to everyone who's watching, and a huge special thank you to all of our members. Without you, none of this would be possible. And don't forget, if you're not already, I highly encourage you to become a member of Animation Resources. With the monthly reference packs curated by our board, you will have a great start at building a personal library of reference material that will serve you for your entire artistic career. And it's a huge bargain. It's only $70 per year if you're a student, and $95 per year for the general membership. You can sign up right now at animationresources.org/membership. One more time, that's animationresources.org/membership.